The first coat in the coat series, the Unlined jacket using New Look 6035. So if that's some content you would like to see, keep on watching. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Rochelle from Rochelle.Handmade.Designs, and in this video we are going to do a quick pattern review and then off to the sew along. Now this is coat number 1, the Unlined jacket, utilizing New Look 6035. Now before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe button, and also turn on the notification bell so you are notified every time I upload a new video. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Hello, ciao, guten tag, aloha, hola, konnichiwa, wagwan, bonjour. If you're returning to the channel, you know what to do. Go get something to drink and a quick snack. Come on back so we can go ahead and get into this pattern review and then off to the sew along. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into this video. All right, so you guys know that this is the third time that I have done this jacket as a sew along, okay? So the first time I talked about how I did it with an old GoPro from, I want to say I probably had the GoPro from 2015, and I didn't have a lot of space in a finished room over the garage when I was filming back then. This is like early 2000 when I filmed this jacket. So then I decided to refilm it again because there was issues with the dart from a lot of the viewers. So I filmed it again last year in October, and when I filmed it, I thought the music was nice and wasn't so loud. That did not happen. So I'm filming it again, and I did film it while I was sewing this together. So that's what we're going to get into here shortly. Let's talk about the pattern description. So the pattern description for New Look 6035 is just a Mrs. Unlined Blazer jacket. That's it. It has, view A is just your regular jacket. View B, you can do like a color block on the sleeve facing. There's a sleeve facing where you could color block the blazer. Also, it has side seam pocket, not side seams, but patch pockets on the side if you want to do that view as well. But I did view A, and the sew along is for view A. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the skill level. So for this pattern, the skill level is like intermediate, but the sew along is for, I did the sew along for a beginner. So if you are a true beginner, you can do this pattern. If you are uncertain on what size to cut, I will go ahead and put it in the description box below how to size up a pattern, because I'll just go ahead and put the shacket pattern where I sized up the shacket pattern to show you how you size up a pattern. All right, but the skill level is intermediate beginner. All right, let's talk about notions used. So the notions used for this pattern is just basically one button. That's all you need outside of your interfacing and your thread. Nothing more than that. All right, so that's the notions used for this pattern. Let's talk about fabric use. So the fabric for this pattern, I use 100% cotton, 100% ankara print. This print is from waxprintsandmore. I picked this up, I want to say probably back in 2019, 2020 time frame, and it's just been hiding in my stash of ankara fabrics, okay? I will show you the stash at a later time, okay? But it's a lot of fabric that I have in ankara print, and this is one that I've been wanting to use. You will see this print again because I want to make a pair of pants. It's just I didn't have time to do that this week, okay? So that's why you're not seeing pants to go along with this jacket, okay, or Unlined Blazer. All right, let's talk about pattern pieces. Now I'm not going to get into pattern pieces because you're going to see that in the sew along, but I will talk about the pattern sizing. So for pattern sizing, this size, the pattern comes in size 8 to 20. The size that I cut for this pattern was a size 16 for this pattern, which gives you a finished bust measurement of a 44 and a half, which was good for me so I can layer it as well. I did want to originally get to 43, but 44 and a half is perfect for me to layer turtlenecks and stuff underneath. I just did one look because I was pressed for time. I did finish this jacket yesterday. Saturday, I want to say roughly about noon, because I did start the sew along very, very early in the morning, like at 7:15, and I was done with this jacket roughly about 11:30. So sewing time from start to finish was about 4 hours, but I did take a break to eat breakfast, okay? So it is a easy sew once you get started, all right? Let's talk about modifications. Did I make any modifications for this pattern? Absolutely not. I sewed it pretty much straight out of the package, okay? No modifications whatsoever for this jacket. I didn't feel like I needed to make any modifications because I have sewn this so many times. Outside of the usual sizing up of the waist and the hips, I did not make any other modifications, but I will link both of those older videos in the description box below so you can see what I'm talking about, simply because I made that modification in those two videos. So I don't feel like I need to say that again, but I did size it up about 1.5 inches at the waist and again at the hips, all right? Let's talk about, did it look like the photos of the drawing on the pattern envelope? Absolutely. The only difference is the fabric, but it's exactly like the model on the pattern envelope, all right? Are the instructions easy to follow? To be honest with you, I'm gonna say yes, they are easy to follow. However, I have sewn this exact same pattern 4 to 5 times, so at this point, I did not use the instructions. But from previously looking at the instructions, the first time I made it, it was easy then, and it's still going to be easy now. The instructions are super easy to follow if you are an intermediate beginner. However, if you are a true beginner, it may not be so easy when it gets to the dart, the under collar and the upper collar portion, and the facing. So if you're a true beginner, I highly advise you to look at the sew along for this pattern. If you have this pattern, you can still get it in the pattern drawer as well as on the Simplicity website. It's still available at this time. Thank me later. Go and get this pattern after you see the sew along, all right? Likes and dislikes. I don't have any dislikes for this pattern. It's all likes. Love, love, love this pattern. Come on, I sewed it 5 times, okay? So yes, I love this pattern. First time experiences, none whatsoever. There's nothing that I haven't done for this pattern. 5th time sewing it, so there's nothing new at this point, all right? Would I sew it again? Yes, I would. Anytime I need a blazer, I could easily pull out this pattern, 9 pattern pieces, and I'm good to go. Would I recommend this pattern to others? Absolutely. At least try this pattern one time to see if this blazer is for you. I like the room. I love the, you know, side, front, side, back. I love it. It's not just all one piece for the front, all one piece for the back. So I do like that as well. However, it could be tedious putting it together if you are not ready for jackets, coats, and blazers and things of that nature, all right? My pattern rating. So for my pattern rating, it's a 5 out of 5 because, y'all, I love this pattern, all right? So that's it for the pattern review. Now that we talked about the entire pattern review, and I wanted to keep it short, I'm sorry if I talked a little too fast on this pattern review. You can always rewind back if you are unsure of what I said for this pattern review. Now that we had this entire pattern review, let's go ahead and get right on over to the sew along.
If I ever took it, I'll made it back. So the dogs, we gon' get it, that's a fact. They counting on me, I can't let my people down. Standing tall,
let's go ahead and get into the new sew along for New Look 6035. Like I said before, I have not 1 but 2 sew alongs, but I am going to be removing those to just have this one, because the first one, it's a lot of shaking of the camera, and then the second one had music in it to where it was hard for you to hear me because the music was too loud. So thank you guys for letting me know that. So I am refilming it and doing it. Hopefully this would be the best one, all right? But this is New Look 6035. I will be doing view A, which means basically I'm just gonna construct the blazer. I will not be doing view B, so I will be omitting the pocket and the sleeve. I think they are calling this the sleeve facing, I think, is the color block, but you could do that. Actually, you know what? I will leave the other ones up just in case you want to go to both of those for something that I missed and you didn't understand here. You could go to the first one because the first New Look 6035, which I will link to both of those videos in the description box below, but that one does have the sleeve heading, how to do it. The second one does not. All right, so I'm not gonna do a whole bunch of details of the pattern because it's in both of those, but I will tell you, you know, the tools and supplies that you need as well as the pattern, all right, the pattern instructions. So let's go ahead and get started. Starting with the tools and supplies that you need. You go need basically your basic tools and supplies like pens, rotary cutters, one for paper, one for fabric, scissors, one for paper, one for fabric, fabric marker, point turners, seam rippers, the basics that you use, you know, when you are sewing. So everything that I have showed this far in your, you know, all my sew alongs for tools and supplies, you're going to need the same thing. Okay, so those are just going to be your standard items that you will need for everything that you sew. All right, so let's go ahead and move over to the instructions. All right, so like I said, I am doing view A on, now this is an old pattern that I have sewn this jacket. This will be my 4th or 5th time sewing this blazer. I love this pattern for a quick blazer unlined, of course, but I am doing view A, so you will need pattern piece 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So 9 pattern pieces in order to do the jacket. I am doing a size 16 for my jacket because it gives me a bust of a 44. Now I have made all the adjustments that I need for my jacket. Do the same thing. I have showed you before on how to size up patterns, so just do the same thing for yours. Make sure you measure at your bust, at your waist, and at your hips before making any adjustments and before cutting any pattern pieces out. All right. Also, make sure you are looking at the cutting layout. I say this in every tutorial because I'll be doing view A and my fabric is 44 to 45 inch fabric. I will be following 1A for my cutout. So I have already cut all my pattern pieces out as well. So for view A, and because I'm doing a size 16, so for this pattern, you will cut out the pieces the same no matter what size you are doing. If you are doing view A and cutting out 44 to 45 inch fabric, just make sure you look at that layout. So basically for me, pattern piece number 3, 7, and 5, the pattern piece needs to be facing down on the right side of the pattern piece needs to be facing down with the wrong side of the pattern pieces facing up, and then you're going to cut around. I'll explain that here shortly when I get to the pattern pieces as well. So now that I talked about the pattern instructions, because we're just going to do it all together, all right, let's go ahead and move over to the pattern pieces. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the pattern pieces used for this unlined jacket, coat number 1 in the coat series. So the first pattern piece, it's not in any order to be honest with you, is pattern piece number 7. This is your front facing. You need to have the wrong side of the fabric facing up and the right side of the fabric, which is pattern piece number 7, facing down on the fabric. You're going to cut 2 of fabric and also interface 2. Now I do not have any interfacing on mine because I like to show you before I interface, but once I get ready to sew it, I will have interfacing on mine, all right? And if you just do not want to put that interfacing on yours, you do not have to. It'll just be a very super lightweight jacket, all right? Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 8, which is your back facing. You need to cut 1 on the fold of fabric, 1 on the fold of interfacing. Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 6, which is your under collar. Let me get this. All right, so pattern piece number 6, which is your under collar, you need to cut 2 of fabric and 1 of interfacing. Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 5, your upper collar. You need to cut 1 on the fold of fabric and also 1 on the fold of interfacing. Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 9, your sleeve. You need to cut to a fabric. Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 2, which is your side front. You need to cut to a fabric. Next one is pattern piece number 4, your side back. You need to cut to a fabric. Pattern piece number 1, which is the front. You need to cut to a fabric. And also for this pattern, you need to definitely transfer all your dots and your notches as well. Make sure you do that on all pattern pieces. It makes a big difference. And the last pattern piece is pattern piece number 3, which is your back. You need to cut one on the fold. However, you want to make sure that the wrong side of your pattern is facing down. I mean, the right side of your fabric is pattern piece is facing down, wrong side facing up, and you're going to cut all the way around. So make sure you do that for pattern piece 3, 5, and 7. All right. So now that's all the pattern pieces that you need in order to construct this blazer. So let's go ahead and get right on into the sewing. All right, so go ahead and grab pattern piece number 1 and pattern piece number 2, your front and your side front. You're going to do the exact same thing to the back. So I'm just going to kind of touch bases on what you're going to do. I'm going to move one of my fronts out of the way. I did mark the right and the wrong side because it looks the same on both sides. So I'm just going to grab one of my pattern piece number 1 and I'm going to move the other one out of the way. You're going to do this for both front pattern pieces. So be mindful of that as well. And then grab pattern piece number 2. Now on this one, I did not mark the right or the wrong side. So I'm just going to go ahead and do what I normally do, mark the wrong side of my pattern piece so I don't get confused of which one goes where. Okay. So I like to do that simply because it keeps me on track, basically. All right, so now what you're going to do is you're going to attach your side front to your front. And how you're going to do that is you have to look at your pattern pieces. Now, this one, it's going to go on this side right here, right? Well, this is the wrong side. I'm going to bring this up so you can see the number 2. So that will not match up, okay? So it has to be this one, which is the side back. And what you're going to do is match up the notches. So you have a notch right here. So that top notch is going to match up. Make sure you have right sides together, okay? So pin right there at that notch. Pin right here at that side corner. And then pin your second notch, which you should have a second notch right here. And you're going to pin all the way down, all right? So make sure you are pinning all the way down that side curve, okay? So go ahead and pin now. So now that I have my side front pinned to my front, here's a couple of things I want to tell you. It is not going to sit on there perfectly. So I have a little give right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip at my front just to have it ease in, okay? You don't want to make a big old snip, but you just want to snip a little bit when you go to the sewing machine, just for this to give and fit onto your front with no issues, all right? So using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're going to start at this front and the side front. Start at the beginning, back stitch at the beginning, so all the way down to the end and back stitch at the end. If you are not lining your jacket, because this is supposed to be an unlined jacket, if you created lining for it, you know, you're going to sew your lining the exact same way that you do for your, you know, main fabric. All right. But what I'm going to do is use my serger. So I'm going to be back stitching at the beginning and at the end and finishing off all of my seams with my serger. Now I am not finishing it off separately. I'm just going to serge them together. All right. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the side front attached to the front, right sides together, and then what I did is I finished off my seam allowance and pressed the seam allowance towards the front. So you press this seam allowance towards the front, which is pattern piece number 1. All right, so now I hope you did that to both front pattern pieces. So move your front and side front out of the way. Grab pattern piece number 3 and 4, which is your back and side back. And you're pretty much just going to do the exact same thing. So one thing I want to do, I'm going to back up one to the front and side front. So I forgot to mention this in the instructions. It tells you to stay stitch. So you're going to start at the top, stay stitch a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So you're going to start at the top and come all the way down to this dot. Make sure you transfer all your dots and notches. It makes a huge difference, okay? So start at the beginning, come to this dot right here. You probably can't see it on mine, but I did try to make an X right there so you can see where the black is. Come all the way down there, and then you do not need to back stitch at the beginning or at the end when you are doing stay stitching. So you're gonna come all the way down, and then you're going to stay stitch between the 2 dots. So you're gonna start at this dot and come all the way to the other dot right here. So I'm gonna try to bring it closer so you can see it. So start at the top and come all the way down to this dot right here, and then start at this dot and come all the way across to this other dot. 1/2 inch seam allowance front. Do that for both front pieces, okay? And then on the back, so moving over to the back and the side back, what you want to do is stay stitch your neck edge of the back, okay? So what I did is I started in the center and went all the way over to one side, flip it over, and then starting back in the center, go to the other side, okay? So do that for your back pattern piece as well. Stay stitch the neck edge if you have not done so already. All right, so I have done both of mine. So the next step that I'm gonna do is just like I did to the front pattern piece, I'm going to attach my side back to my back right sides together. So the first thing I'm gonna do is make sure I mark the wrong side of my side back pattern pieces because I forgot to do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I place them where they need to go, okay? So this is the right side, so I'm gonna turn it over and make sure that I pin both of those the right way, all right? So you're gonna basically pin the exact same way like you did for your front pattern piece, matching up the double notches. So that goes here. I'm not going to show you how to do both, but I'll show you how to pin, and then you'll do the other side yourself and then finish it off. All right, pin at the top. And then you're going to pin along the side of your side back. So I'm going to pin at the bottom first, and then I'm going to pin the length of my side back and back pattern piece or fabric. So go ahead and pin all the way up now. So now that I have it pinned, once again, you do have a little ease right here where you will need to make some clips when you go to the sewing machine. And what I mean by clips, you guys have seen me do this before. I'm just going to make a couple of snips, not big, within that seam allowance so it could give and I could sew without having to do a lot of stretching, okay? So using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and at the end, finish off your seam allowance and press it towards the back of the pattern piece, okay? Or the back of your fabric. All right, so go ahead and do both sides now. All right, so now that I have my side back attached to my back right sides together, I went ahead and finished them off. So I'm going to turn it over to this is the wrong side, so I finished them off and pressed the seam allowance towards the back. So the next thing you're going to do is with right sides together, you're going to attach the front to the back at the shoulders. So I'm going to make sure that I have the right side, and you should have this part right here, okay, on the side. So I'm going to make sure that this is my front and this is my side front, and you want to make sure that you are matching up. Your notches should match up at your shoulders, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm attaching front to back at the shoulders. Now in the instructions, it will tell you to match front to back at the shoulders and side seams. Now, the reason why I am not doing the side seams is because I'm going to do the flat method for my sleeves, and it really saves time doing it that way. So that's why I will not be attaching the side seams right now. I will attach my side seam when I attach my sleeves here shortly, all right? So I just finished pinning that side. I'm going to pin the other side as well. So like I said, match up your notches. And then pin at the beginning and at the end, all right? So go ahead and pin all the way across your shoulders now. All right, now using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and at the end and sew across both shoulder seams. Once you do that, finish it off and press your seam allowance towards the back of your blazer, jacket, coat, whatever you want to call it. All right, so go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and attached front to back at the shoulders, I finished it off and pressed my seam allowance towards the back. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and do my sleeve. So I'm going to move this out of the way right quick. Grab pattern piece number 9, your sleeves. And I already did prep work for my sleeves to cut down on time. That's the only reason why I do some of the prep work prior to telling you what I did. Like I have already installed one sleeve into my blazer, which I'm going to show you that now. Right here. And I use the flat method, okay? So it's already installed into my sleeve, which I'm going to show you how to do the other side now. So go ahead and grab pattern piece number 9. Now this is the wrong side of my fabric facing up on the table. So what I did was I went ahead and made gathering stitches. So basically at that single notch, I backstitch at that single notch. I did 2 rolls of stitching. The first one at a 1/2 inch, the second one at a 1/4 of an inch, okay? And the reason why I don't do 5/8 of an inch seam allowance is simply because I don't want to be unpicking thread once I sew it in. So that's why I just use a little bit less than what the seam allowance is. So a 1/2 inch and a 1/4 inch is what I use. You could do 3/8 and a 1/4 of an inch if you want to as well. So you do not have to remove basting stitch when you're done. So I backstitch at, using the longest length stitch, I backstitch at the single notch, came all the way around to the double notch. That's how I do my, you know, basically eased in my sleeve between the 2 notches, okay? So I went ahead and did that. I do have a dot in the center of my sleeve. Reason why is because that's gonna match up with your shoulder seams, okay? So if you did not make that dot, mark that dot on your, pattern piece, you know, from your pattern piece, transferred it, go ahead and do that now. And then also on the wrong side of my fabric, now I know on the pattern it has a notch. I am not making the sleeve facing, so that's why I am just going to use 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And what I did was I did a basting stitch at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I serged my seam because this is just going to be like a lightweight blazer. It's not like I'm gonna wear it as a, you know, tailored blazer or a business style blazer. It's just kind of like to put on nice chilly days, okay? So I went ahead and serged the ends of it, and then I pressed up that 5/8 of an inch, which you can see right here, 5/8 of an inch, I pressed up, and then on the right side, I went ahead and stitched it down. So this is what it's looking like right now. I'm gonna turn it to the right side. This is the right side. And this is what it looks like right now, okay? Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I already pulled up the gathering stitches for my sleeve. I'm going to go ahead and use the flat method. You guys have seen me do the flat method several times, but I don't know if you ever seen me do it on a blazer. So I'm going to show you this kind of on camera, you know, what you need to do. And it cuts down on sewing the side seams and then, you know, have to do a set end sleeve. I really do not like doing a lot of set end sleeves. I prefer the flat method when I do sleeves. So you will see a lot of the flat method on my tutorials unless I have a double sleeve. And what I mean by a double sleeve is I have an upper sleeve and a lower sleeve. When I have those, then I will do a set-in sleeve instead of a flat method, okay? But this one is just, you know, your normal, you know, I could do a flat method for this one because it doesn't have a 2-piece sleeve, if that makes sense, okay? So first things first, there is the dot. I'm going to match up my shoulder seams with that dot. I'm making sure that my seam allowance is pressed towards the back. This is the back of my blazer jacket. So I'm going to match up that dot with that shoulder seam, making sure the seam allowance is to the back of my jacket. I'm going to pin there. After I pin there, I'm going to look for the front Now the left side of me is the front, the right side of me is the back. So I'm gonna find the single notch. I'm sorry, so this is the front of me, this is the back of me, okay? So first things first, make sure that you are pinning on the right side. I almost pinned the wrong side. Make sure right sides together, all right? So I'm going to pin my dot at that shoulder seam. Now, because I'm gonna tell you what just happened, all right? So I had my sleeve turned the wrong side, okay? So the wrong side to the right side of my fabric. And of my jacket. And what I noticed is the notches were not matching. You do not want that. So you wanna make sure that the single notch match up with the single notch, the double notch match with the double notch. Make sure you have right sides together. It makes a huge difference. Do not get lazy on your garments, okay? So that's just a tip. So now what I am doing is I'm matching the single notch with the single notch on my front, my side front. So that single notch should be at your side front. You're gonna just match your sleeve. That's those two single notches, and you're going to pin. I'm going to pin here as well, the end. I'm gonna put a couple of more pins in between. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure to ease in my sleeve. So basically, if you need to pull up some more gathers, you can. Just make sure you have enough pulled up to fit the sleeve onto your arm's eye area of your jacket. You do not want any puckers. You don't want any bunching going on. You don't want any of that jazz. You want a nice, clean satin sleeve, flat method, whichever one you want to do. All right, so I have the front portion pinned. Now I'm going to do the back portion, and what you do, pretty much the same thing. You take your double notches now, and then you match the double notches up to the double notches in the back of your jacket, which should be on your side back pattern piece, all right? And then you're gonna pin at the ends. Put some pins in between the notch and the ends, and then pin the rest of your sleeve to that armhole area. So go ahead and pin now, making sure you do not have any puckers going on, any type of huge gathers going on. Make sure that it is even all the way around that arm's eye area. So go ahead and pin now. So now that I have my sleeve pinned to the arm area of my jacket, I'm going to start at the beginning using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning, so all the way around, and back stitch at the end. After you have sewn your sleeve to your arm's eye area, go ahead and finish it off using your serger, pinking shirts, bias tape, whatever you're using to finish off your seam allowance. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and did the flat method on my sleeves, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to sew the side seams and the underarm seams. So I'm going to turn it to the side, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and match up my underarm seams right here, making sure that my seam allowance is pressed and sewn towards the sleeve. You know, basically you want to press it towards the sleeve instead of towards the jacket. So make sure you line up those seams, and you're going to pin there. And then you have a single notch on your sleeve. You want to pin that, right? And then you want to pin the notch that you have on your side front, which is right here. You want to pin that. And then what you're going to do is basically just pin all the way across, you know, basically your sleeve and your side seam. So go ahead and pin all the way across the underarm seam and the side seam now. All right, so now that I have my underarm seam and my side seam pinned using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning, so all the way, so your underarm seam and then come all the way across to your side seam, and so that side seam, and then you're gonna back stitch at the end. So go ahead and do that, and then finish off your seam. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and sewn the side seam and finished off the sleeve of my jacket, I'm going to move this out of the way quickly. You could just basically hang it up because you're not gonna need it right this second. We're going to start working on the under collar. So go ahead and grab pattern piece number 6. You should have some dots right here, 3 dots on this, I guess you could call it this curved area, I guess. Or lapel area, whatever. But you should have 3 dots right here. You should have transferred your 3 notches in the back, the 1 notch here on the under portion of the under collar, and the top have 2 notches. All right, so make sure you transferred all your notches for your under collar. All right, I also marked the back of it like I have done previously. All right, so now what you want to do is you want to go ahead and pin your center back. That's where you have the 3 notches. So just go ahead and pin the center back, pin at the top and the bottom of your center back. So go ahead and pin now. And then what we're going to do is using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and sew your center back seam. Once you do that, go ahead and press your seams open. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my under collar stitched together at the center back of the collar, go ahead and grab your jacket, and what we're going to do is attach the under collar to our jacket at the front. All right, so first of all, what you want to do is go ahead, and you have dots, one right there, one right there. That matches up with the dots that you see on the front. So what you want to do is right at that notch, pin that notch there, just like that. Make sure that other dot, which is this dot right here, match to that dot on your jacket, and you want to pin there. This is the portion where most have a difficult time doing. So I want to make sure that I am pretty much stating this, you know, before you do anything else. So let's do the other side as well. So match up that notch first, and then match up the dot on the other side. All right, so go ahead and match up your notches now, your notch and your dots now. All right, so now that I have this sewn, you can go ahead and attach the back portion as well. But what I want to do is, before I do that, I'm going to do this like it says in the instructions. I'm going to start at this dot, back stitch at the beginning and sew to the other dot, and then back stitch at the end. So go ahead and do that now on both sides. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and attached the under collar to just that front piece portion between those 2 dots, like you see right here, where you have that, where the dart's going to start from here to here. Okay, so that's just the 2 dots that you have in the front. I went ahead and attached it there. We're gonna attach the entire under collar to our jacket, but first what we're going to do is we're gonna pin our dart and pin the under collar. All right, now I'm gonna grab pattern piece number 1, which is here. I'm gonna move this out of the way, the jacket out of the way real quick so you can see this on the table. This is your dart right here. So you have a dot right here and then 2 dots up here that you should have transferred to the front of your pattern piece, okay? So I'm gonna show you what it looks like on my jacket. So if you're looking on the inside, you will see that I have it marked. I have a dot here and 2 dots up here. So what you want to do is take from that dot to one of the other dots where the 2 dots are, and then make your dart line. Basically, is what you're going to do. So now what you're going to do, let me grab some pins. You're basically gonna just pin out your dart like you would if it was a dart on, you know, your bust dart or, all right, so basically what you're going to do is just pin out your dart like you would for any bust dart. So go ahead and pin at the top, making sure that both of those dots are matching up. Just make sure, you know, just basically play around with the dots to make sure they're matching up in the front and the back. And then you're just gonna pin out your darts, making sure that the back line is touching the front line for your dart. You're going to do this on both sides. So go ahead and pin out your dart now. So now I have this side of my dart pin. After you do the other side, all you're going to do is basically attach your undercollar to, you know, your jacket. And how you would do that is matching up your notches and pin all the way across. So go ahead and finish making the dart on the other side and pin all the way across now. All right, so now that I have my undercollar pinned to my jacket, I have the darts made back and forth, right? So this is what you're going to do, all right? So you know how with darts, you do not back stitch at the beginning. That I'm going to start at the center back stitch at the beginning, and then sew all the way to the dart, and then tie it off. Then flip it over, starting back at the center back, go to the other side and finish off my darts. Just tie it off, okay? So that's what I'm gonna do. You could decide which way you want to do yours. Just make sure you do not back stitch at the end of your dart, all right? So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my undercollar attached to my jacket, I have the darts made, I tied them at the end. Go ahead and move your jacket off to the side real quick and grab your facing pieces. So grab pattern piece number 7 first. And what you want to do with this is right here you have dots. You have a dot there, a dot here, and a dot at the front, okay? You want to reinforce between those dots. So what you're going to do is using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, just reinforce in between that dot because you're gonna cut through it, okay? Not through the stitching, but you're gonna cut through to it, okay? Now, go ahead and grab pattern piece number 7, which is your back facing, okay? Which should have been cut on the fold. Now, a little trick to this is I ran out of fabric to cut on the fold. So I'm gonna tell you what I did. So I cut one too many, so I'm just gonna tell you what I did. So for this one, I'm gonna move this out of the way to explain what I did, and it's still gonna work out perfectly. So for instance, I'm gonna grab this. If this happens to you, this is what you could do. It's called save the fabric, okay? So you know how this piece is supposed to be cut on the fold? Well, what I did was, because I didn't have enough to cut on the fold, what I did was I measured from the center front seam a 1/2 inch, okay, and made a line. So then what I did was I sewed just the center front, right, a 1/2 inch. Once I sewed a 1/2 inch, it becomes one full piece, okay? But you have to make sure you add that seam allowance, otherwise it's not gonna work out perfectly when you interface, okay? So that's what I did for mine. And that is just a tip. You don't need to do this every time, to be honest with you. And that's why, if you see it very closely, it's probably hard for you to tell. You can see that there is a line right here, a seam right here. So if I open it up, I'm gonna try to bring it as close as I can. There's a seam right here, okay? You can't see it because it's interfaced already. But what we're going to do is, with right sides together, we're going to pin the front facing to the back facing at the shoulders, okay? So it should look like this. Make sure your notches are matching up at the shoulders. So I'm going to pin across the shoulder portion of my facing, okay? So I'm gonna match up the notch and then pin at the front, that's the beginning and at the end. So go ahead and pin down. Alright, so now that I have it pinned using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, backstitch at the beginning and at the end and sew across both shoulder seams. After you do that, press your seams open. After you press your seams open, you want to finish off with your serger this side seam right here. So you want to finish off the side seam right here on both sides, and then your bottom right here of your back seam. So go ahead and do that now. Right, so now that I went ahead and attached the facings at the shoulder seams right sides together, I went ahead and finished off the curved edge of the front and the bottom edge of the back. The next thing you want to do is go ahead and grab pattern piece number 5, which is your upper collar. And I'm going to turn mine around this way so you can see this. And what you're going to do is basically pin your upper collar to your facing. So the first thing you want to do is match those 2 notches that you have right on your upper collar. It's the single notches. And you want to pin there. And then you want to pin all the way around your upper collar, okay? So pin there. Make sure you match up this dot that you have right here. You're going to match it up with the front dot that you have right here where you made that clipping. So if you did not make a clipping, what you're going to do is clip, you have 2 dots where you did the reinforced, clip to that dot and to the other dot, but do not clip through your stitching, okay? So I'm going to match those 2 dots up and pin there. And then I'm going to pin in between the dots, but make sure you do not have any puckers, all right? So you're going to do the exact same thing to the other side. So go ahead and pin all the way around now. So now that I have my upper collar pinned to my facing piece, right sides together, what I'm going to do is start in the center back right here, back stitch at the beginning, so all the way to that dot, back stitch at that dot, all right? Then I'm going to flip it over starting at the center back stitch at the beginning and sew to this dot right here and back stitch at the other dot. So I'm just going to go from here to the dot, flip it over from the center to the other dot. Make sure that this seam allowance stays open, pressed open, okay? So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and attached the upper collar to my facing right sides together, I stitched from dot to dot, right? I went ahead and trimmed it down. I'm going to press my seams open is what I'm going to do. So now what you have, I'm going to try to show this on camera. This is what you should have. This is your facing piece. This is your upper collar, okay? This is your back facing. Now what you can do at this point, if you want to add a label, go ahead and add your label to your back facing now before you attach it to your jacket. I'm going to be adding mine here shortly after I pin my facing to my jacket, okay? So go ahead and grab your jacket now. And what you're going to do is, with right sides together, you're going to pin your facing to your jacket. So where you have that upper collar, you want to match that. Make sure you are not putting your back facing on your upper collar, okay? So make sure you have your upper collar. It should look like this, where you have your upper collar, your back facing, and then both of your front facings on the sides, okay? That's what you should be looking at, all right? And then make sure that you pin at those double notches at the top of your facing. And then pin at your other notch as well. And then what you're going to basically do is pin your upper collar to your under collar on your jacket, and then pin your front facing pieces, okay? So go ahead and pin all the way around your jacket now. All right, so when you get here to this dot if you did not do this, you need to attach the upper collar all the way to that first dot that you have. You should have it open, and you're going to pin right there. Make sure you pin there. And then pin the front sections together. And then just pin all the way around the front portion of your facing and collar now. Front and facing now. Now what I want to tell you is at the bottom you have a dot. That's where you're going to backstitch at. Backstitch at the beginning, and then on the other side you're going to backstitch at the end at that dot. So make sure you pin at that dot and then pin all the way around the rest of your jacket. Go ahead and finish pinning the other side now. All right, so now that I have the facing pinned all the way around my jacket, I'm going to start at the center back. I'm going to backstitch at the beginning, sew across the upper and under collar. When I get to that dot, I'm going to pivot, sew to this dot right here, and then pivot, sew across. This is still using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to pivot across. When I get to this dot, I'm going to pivot, sew all the way down the front portion of my jacket and stop at this dot. Backstitch at this dot right here, okay? Once I do that, I'm gonna flip it over. So I'm gonna flip it over so you can see this. So I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna start at the center back again, backstitch at the beginning. When I get to this dot, pivot, sew to this second dot, pivot again, sew across to this dot, pivot, sew along my front, and then when I get to this dot right here, I'm going to back stitch. Once I do that, I'm going to trim it down and then understitch. I am going to understitch on my facing at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance as far as I possibly can go, okay? Once you do that, give it a good press, and then the only thing that's left to do is your hem. So go ahead and do that first, and then we'll come back and do our hem. So go ahead and stitch all the way around your facing now. All right, so now that I have my facing on, I went ahead, I understitch on the facing all the way around as far as I possibly could. I gave it a really good press to press it into submission, okay? All right, so I did that for the facing. So you may ask what's going on with this back piece. So what I am doing is I am attaching my back facing and front facing where you have that flap going. I am just attaching it to my arm seam or my sleeve seam. So basically I'm just going to do probably like 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to tack that on right here at both shoulder seam for my front and back facing right here at the shoulder seam, so I don't have this flipping up every time I wear it, okay? So I'm gonna do that on both sides. Another thing that I did is I made sure that at the dots, I made sure that to stop. Then that way, when you have it folded in, you know, when you're wearing it, it's not looking weird. So you should have a nice curve right here, okay? So make sure that you stopped at the dots like I told you on both sides. Same thing goes for this side as well. You want it to look really nice and finished, okay? So the only thing that's left for you to do after you give it a good press is mark up your hem. Now my hem is only going to be 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I don't remember what it says on the pattern because I don't have the pattern pieces, okay? So I'm just gonna make a basting stitch all the way around, press up 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then on the right side I'm going to stitch my hem in place, okay? After I do that, the only thing that's left to do is on your right side when wearing it. So I'm just going to turn it over to the right side. And what you need to do is right here, you should have marked your buttonhole, and all you're going to do is make your buttonhole on whatever machine that you have and attach your button to the other side. So that's your buttonhole, and then on the other side right here, you will be marking your button, placing a button right here, okay? After you do that, you are all done with your jacket. If you make this jacket, do not forget to tag me at Rochelle.Handmade.Design on Instagram. And you can always comment in the description box below as well. I hope you give this little quick and easy blazer a try and tag me for sure. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed.
If I ever took a L and made it back, told the dogs that we gon' get it, that's a fact. They counting on me, I can't let my people down. Standing tall, 10 toes to the...
Alright, so there you have it. That is the entire pattern review and sew along. I hope you enjoyed. If you make this pattern, do not forget to tag me on Instagram at Rochelle.Handmade.Design. So, one more thing before I let you go, don't forget the pattern sale. So the pattern sale this week is Butterick and Vogue. It ends Monday, December the 12th. Both of those are on sale for, so Butterick is $1.99, Vogue is $5.99, and then next week, starting on the 15th, which is Thursday, we have Simplicity Pattern Sale for $1.99. You will see that here right now, and you'll see it again next week when I post them. All right, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you are notified every time I upload a new video. So I'll catch you in the next video, and as always, keep sewing.